Greetings, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Chilliteracy. How are we all doing? Happy Wednesday. 'Tis ever closer to the spooking season day. No, it is spooky season. Halloween, you know what I mean. Hi, chat. How are we all doing? How are we all doing? There we go. Words. I hope we are all well. And thank you all very much, all of you lovely people who resubscribed. Who do we have? We had Arian, thank you very much, and I assume you're probably going to be heading to bed now, given what you said in chat. Sleep well. Amorous, Sam can't ban you for another month at least. Oh, don't test him. Thunder, hello, and thank you very much for the resub. I hope we can distract you. I'm sure everything is fine with essay and things, or essay, whatever it was. And yeah, welcome in everybody else. We got Llama, we got Merrymouse, we got my name is Celestial Ludenberg, which I feel like I need to shorten. And yeah, we don't generally put links in chat, because most of the time it's either a link for, basically the only links we will put is a link to the text that we'll pin up the top, or if people want to do jigsaws together, they'll put that together. But if you want to have eyes on your writing, bung it over in our Discord, and you put it in general Discord chat. Sure. I think we might have one of the channels in the Discord for, reading other people's writing. I can't remember. But sure. Yeah, as Sam says, Twitch chat isn't a good place for self-promo. It's generally frowned upon. Yeah, just as a general sort of, politeness thing. Yeah, we it's only 400 words. Cool. But yeah, we don't want to dissuade people from doing cool things like writing. But yeah, possibly. You submitted it in Discord. Yeah, awesome. But yes. Hello everybody, how are we all doing? I hope we are all well. Arian, you shall stay until the start of the story. Well, in that case, I've just got to, prevaricate and just talk for ages, don't I? So, you accidentally have to stay for the whole stream. I can't do words. You're cold, Parola? Oh no. Oh dear. It is getting chillier. Although it's not actually too bad in the UK at the moment. It's not cold. I say this knowing Sam is probably freezing his fingers off in his room at the moment because, lack of insulation and all that. But here it's nice. But yeah, we are continuing with Turn of the Screw, which Sam, whilst editing down the VOD for YouTube last week, had a good old laugh when I did the Turn of the Screw by James Joyce. Wait, what? Henry James. So that got a chuckle. Don't really know where my brain went. The name James was there, and I was like, well, in that case. But yes, doing well. You do not want to read The Turn of the Screw by James Joyce. No, I'm with you there. Andy. I don't think anybody wants to read most things by James Joyce. Yeah. Is everybody sort of cold? You're warm as your heating finally works. Yay, Llama! Hooray for heating works. Heating working. You have a blanket, Arian. Excellent. And Thunder, you're cold. Oh, you're being good for the environment and not turning on the heating. Good for you. Puzzle link. Nice. Your office is neutral, but you have it on good authority. It's warmer than it ought to be outdoors. Fair enough. Yeah. It is nice and autumnal. Some of the trees around here are looking rather spectacular at the moment. Actually, it's really nice. We've had some blustery days, and it's feeling like a good October. Like, it feels like October should. Although I always feel like October is pretty. October always feels like it should, in my opinion, anyway. Here, but yeah, it always feels kind of as autumnal as it should be, which is nice. You met a Ponies and Johns fan in the wild on Monday. Nice. How did you know? Did you spot them from a distance and go, oh, my people? Were they wearing were they wearing merch? Or was it the Uni Folk Society? Oh, that's cool. I mean, for one, it's cool that the uni has a folk society. Nice. You were very confused by Turn of the Screw 2. Yeah, what, Arian? There's a Turn of the Screw 2? Yeah? What? It's... Oh, part 2. Right, okay. I was like, there's a sequel? Great. You were very confused. Why were you confused? Stuff's just turning beige and falling off. Oh, that's a shame. There's no full colour? Boo. Just, thank you very much, Petra Anna Marie. Turn of the Screw 2, Secret of the Ooze. Turn of the Screw 2, Spooky Boogaloo. I don't know. So all the unis in the city have a joint one. Oh, that's cool. Was wearing a Ponies t-shirt and John's hoodie. Oh wow, they were just doubling up on it. Nice. That's cool. It's 35 where you are, Queek. Bloody hell. Ugh. Far too hot. You were just typing Turn of the Screw 2 Spooky Boogaloo. Yeah, great minds think alike. But yeah. But yeah, we have been I can't speak. Been carrying on with Turn of the Screw. And it's really good. I really like it. I really, really like it. I will say that he's not necessarily my favourite author to read out loud. Just because he's got a lot of kind of like run-on sentences and stuff. There's not actually a lot of punctuation, which is a bit sort of when you're reading it out loud. But I do really. I mean, it's the original, basically the original Creepy Kids ghost story, which turns out is kind of a banger. It's just really good. Like, the atmosphere is fantastic. His sentences are unwieldy. That is an excellent way of putting it, Andy. Yes, that is exactly what they are. Yeah, they are. But he gets atmosphere well, and it's, yeah. I'm certainly enjoying it so far, and I think everybody else is as well. Green Ponies t-shirt, John's Cures What Ails You hoodie, jeans and big boots. Nice. A good combination. It's gross, you want cold. Well, unfortunately, I can't help with that. I left my lip salve downstairs, didn't I? Oh well, bums. There's not actually a lot of punctuation. Sounds like your essays, except there is punctuation. It's just 90% commas. Oh, thunder! You are a person after my own heart. That was my writing experience especially when I was in school. It was just comma after comma after comma. It was clause, subclause, sub-subclause. Anybody know why I like Dickens? James has lots of those. Yes. It's he was paid by the word. Ah, that would explain it. Because I think this was I think this book was done in serials, much like Charlie Dickens. That was true for Dickens, I think. I don't know if he was paid by the word. I think maybe it was, but anyway, a lot of his stories were done in serials, so they were published in newspapers and things. And I think it was the same with the Turn of the Screw as well. So your Goodreads review when you first read this story said, and I quote, "Somebody needed to revoke his comma license." Nice. The Dickens thing is always said like a dunk on him, but also the guy could just write well. Oh, Dickens' writing is wonderful. Like, I like reading it out loud as well. Like, that feels like it has been written to be read out loud. Funny thing. It's just kind of... yeah, I don't know. It feels a bit different from Henry James. Henry James just feels a bit more like, I don't know. I'm not sure, but he wasn't necessarily thinking about it reading out loud, being read out loud. Yeah. 500 words have been removed from the word count of your dissertation. And you're absolutely fuming. You were looking forward to those 500 words. Ah, no. I mean, that's not bad, to be fair. 500 words, like, just going over by 500 is pretty impressive. Like, I think I had to cut maybe like 2,000 from mine. Mine wasn't even a dissertation. Mine was just a research paper thing. And I think I ran over by about 2,000. And I think because it was a little bit more sort of lenient, I managed to bargain with my the guy who my professor, and we sort of ended up sort of shaking hands on like 750 words over is fine. So didn't have too much to cut. But you're gonna have to cut so much once it's done. No, that's rubbish. You would write you a shorter letter, but I did not have the time. Yes, indeed. But yes, I guess if we're all sitting comfortably, what happened last time? Let's do a previously on the turn of the screw. Boom boom. So, what happened? So our main character has gone to the house as like teacher for two delightful, angelic, perfect children, and they are angelic and perfect and fine. Because kids who are perfect are always fine, not creepy, not like working hand in hand with ghosts or anything. Nothing wrong with that. Not creepy, nothing wrong with the kids. No, everything's fine. Everything's absolutely fine. Oh, what's that weird figure over there standing on the tower? That looks like a really nasty man. Weird. Okay. Goes and asks the housekeeper / governess. Can't remember what actual job title she has. Mrs. Groves. Oh yeah, he's dead. Oh, okay, that's fine. Right. Let's just make sure the children don't see that ghost, because there's another one. Okay, that's a woman. Right. Let's make sure the kids don't see the ghosts. Oh wait, the kids are working with the ghosts. Ah, crap. And yeah, that pretty much sums it up. And I think one of my favourite bits from the last bit we read was when she kind of mentioned well, basically oh god, what's the kid's name? Miles, the little boy, when he decided to stand out on the lawn at like 2 a.m. or something. She brought him in. And she was like, "Oh, you've been bad and stuff." And I think he was very. He said something along the lines of, "You don't know how bad I can be," or something like that. And it's like, "Oh no, oh dear, oh this is going to go badly." So yeah, creepy kids, love them. So that is my very. Everything is fine. Exactly. That is my very erudite summation of what's been going on in the turn of the screw so far. There's something about flying a kite at night that's so unwholesome. Yes, Amras. I'm assuming that is like a quote or a reference or something, because no idea. If a small child is always being good, then something is very wrong. You're very true there, Thunder. But yeah, I guess for those of people who need to disappear, good night, sleep well. For everyone else, we shall continue with The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. Chapter 13. It was all very well to join them, but speaking to them proved quite as much as ever an effort beyond my strength, offered in close quarters difficulties as insurmountable as before. This situation continued a month, and with new aggravations and particular notes, the note above all, sharper and sharper, of the small ironic consciousness on the part of my pupils. It was not, I am as sure today as I was sure then, my mere infernal imagination. It was absolutely traceable that they were aware of my predicament, and that this strange relation made, in a manner, for a long time, the air in which we moved. I don't mean that they had their tongues in their cheeks, or did anything vulgar, for that was not one of their dangers. I do mean, on the other hand, that the element of the untamed and untouched became, between us, greater than any other, and that so much avoidance couldn't have been made successful without a great deal of tacit arrangement. It was as if, at moments, we were perpetually coming into sight of subjects before which we must stop short, turning suddenly out of alleys that we perceived to be blind, closing with a little bang that made us look at each other, for, like all bangs, it was something louder than we had intended, the doors we had indiscreetly opened. All roads lead to Rome, and there were times where it might have struck us that almost every branch of study or subject of conversation skirted forbidden ground. Forbidden ground was the question of the return of the dead in general, and of whatever in especial might survive for memory of the friends the little children had lost. There were days when I could have sworn that one of them had, with a small invisible nudge, said to the other, "She thinks she'll do it this time, but she won't." To do it would have been to indulge, for instance, and for once in a way, in some direct reference to the lady who had prepared them for my discipline. They had a delightful endless appetite for passages in my own history to which I had again and again treated them. They were in possession of everything that had ever happened to me, had, with every circumstance, the story of my smallest adventures, and those of my brothers and sisters, and of the cat and the dog at home, as well as many particulars of the whimsical bent of my father, of the furniture and arrangement of our house, and of the conversation of the old women of our village. There were things enough, taking one with another, to chatter about, if one went very fast and knew by instinct when to go round. They pulled with an art of their own the strings of my invention and my memory, and nothing else perhaps, when I thought of such occasions afterwards, gave me so the suspicion of being watched from under cover. It was, in any case, over my life, my past, and my friends alone that we could take anything like our ease, a state of affairs that led them sometimes without the least pertinence to break out into sociable reminders. I was invited, with no visible connection, to repeat afresh Goody Gosling's celebrated mot, or to confirm the details already supplied as to the cleverness of the vicarage pony. It was partly at such junctures as these, and partly at quite different ones, that, with the turn my matters had now taken, my predicament, as I have called it, grew most sensible. The fact that the days passed for me without another encounter ought, it would have appeared, to have done something toward soothing my nerves. Since the light brush, that second night on the upper landing of the presence of a woman at the foot of the stair, I had seen nothing, whether in or out of the house, that one had better not have seen. There was many a corner round which I expected to come upon Quint, and many a situation that, in a merely sinister way, would have favoured the appearance of Miss Jessel. The summer had turned. The summer had gone. The autumn had dropped upon Bly and had blown out half our lights. The place, with its grey sky and withered garlands, its bared spaces and scattered dead leaves, was like a theatre after the performance, all strewn with crumpled playbills. There were exactly states of the air, conditions of sound and of stillness, unspeakable impressions of the kind of ministering moment that brought back to me, long enough to catch it, the feeling of the medium in which, that June evening out of doors, I had had my first sight of Quint, and in which, too, at those other instants, I had, after seeing him through the window, looked for him in vain in the circle of shrubbery. I recognized the signs, the portents. I recognized the moment, the spot. But they remained unaccompanied and empty, and I continued unmolested, if unmolested one could call a young woman whose sensibility had, in the most extraordinary fashion, not declined, but deepened. I had said in my talk with Mrs. Grose on that horrid scene of Flora's by the lake, and had perplexed her by so saying, that it would from that moment distress me much more to lose my power than to keep it. I had then expressed what was vividly in my mind, the truth that, whether the children really saw or not, since, that is, it was not yet definitely proved, I greatly preferred, as a safeguard, the fullness of my own exposure. I was ready to know the very worst that was to be known. What I had then had an ugly glimpse of was that my eyes might be sealed whilst theirs were most opened. Just while theirs were most opened. Well, my eyes were sealed, it appeared, at present, a consummation for which it seemed blasphemous not to thank God. There was, alas, a difficulty about that. I would have thanked him with all my soul, had I not had in a proportionate measure this conviction of the secret of my pupils. How can I retrace today the strange steps of my obsession? There were times of our being together when I would have been ready to swear that, literally in my presence, but with my direct sense of it closed, they had visitors who were known and were welcome. Then it was that, had I not been deterred by the very chance that such an injury might prove greater than the injury to be averted, my exultation would have broken out. "They're here! They're here, you little wretches!" I would have cried, "and you can't deny it now." The little wretches denied it with all the added volume of their sociability and their tenderness, just in the crystal depths of which, like the flash of a fish in a stream, the mockery of their advantage peeped up. The shock had in truth sunk into me deeper, still deeper than I knew on the night when, looking out either for Quint or for Miss Jessel under the stars, I had seen there the boy over whose rest I watched, and who had immediately brought in with him, had straightway there turned on me the lovely upward look with which, from the battlements above us, the hideous apparition of Quint had played. If it was a question of a scare, my discovery on this occasion had scared me more than any other, and it was essentially in the scared state that I drew my actual conclusions. They harassed me so that sometimes, at odd moments, I shut myself up audibly to rehearse. It was at once a fantastic relief and a renewed despair, the manner in which I might come to the point. I approached it from one side and the other while, in my room, I flung myself about, but I always broke down in the monstrous utterances of names. As they died away on my lips, I said to myself that I should indeed help them to represent something infamous, if by pronouncing them I should violate as rare a little case of instinctive delicacy as any schoolroom probably had ever known. When I said to myself, "They have the manners to be silent, and you, trusted as you are, the baseness to speak," I felt myself crimson and covered my face with my hands. After these secret scenes, I chattered more than ever, going on volubly enough till one of our prodigious, palpable hushes occurred. I can call them nothing else. The strange, dizzy lift or swim, I try for terms, into a stillness, a pause of all life, that had nothing to do with the more or less noise we at the moment might be engaged in making. and that I could hear through any intensified mirth or quickened recitation or louder strum of the piano. Then it was that the others, the outsiders, were there. Though they were not angels, they passed, as the French say, causing me, while they stayed, to tremble with the fear of their addressing to their younger victims some yet more infernal message or more vivid image than they had thought good enough for myself. What it was least possible to get rid of was the cruel idea that, whatever I had seen, Miles and Flora saw more. Things terrible and unguessable. And that sprang from dreadful passages of intercourse in the past. Such things naturally left on the surface, for the time, a chill that we vociferously denied we felt, and we had all three, with repetition, got into such splendid training that we went, each time, to mark the close of the incident, almost automatically through the very same movements. It was striking of the children at all events to kiss me inveterately with a wild irrelevance, and never to fail, one or the other, of the precious question that had helped us through many a peril. "When do you think he will come? Don't you think we ought to write?" There was nothing like that inquiry, we found by experience, for carrying off an awkwardness. He, of course, was their uncle in Harley Street, and we lived in much profusion of theory that he might at any moment arrive to mingle in our circle. It was impossible to have given less encouragement than he had administered to such a doctrine, but if we had not had the doctrine to fall back upon, we should have deprived each other of some of our finest exhibitions. He never wrote to them. That may have been selfish, but it was a part of the flattery of his trust of myself. For the way in which a man pays his highest tribute to a woman is apt to be put by the more festal celebration of one of the sacred laws of his comfort. So I held that I carried out the spirit of the pledge, given not to appeal to him when I let our young friends understand that their own letters were but charming literary exercises. They were too beautiful to be posted. I kept them myself. I have them all to this hour. There was a rule, indeed, which only added to the satiric effect of my being plied with the supposition that he might at any moment be among us. It was exactly as if our young friends knew how almost more awkward than anything else that might be for me. There appears to me, moreover, as I look back, no note in all this more extraordinary than the mere fact that, in spite of my tension and of their triumph, I never lost patience with them. Adorable they must in truth have been, I now feel, since I didn't in these days hate them. Would exasperation, however, if relief had longer been postponed, finally have betrayed me? It little matters, for relief arrived. I call it relief, though it was only the relief that a snap brings to a strain, or the burst of a thunderstorm to a day of suffocation. It was at least change, and it came with a rush. Chapter 14. Walking to church a certain Sunday morning, I had little Miles at my side and his sister, in advance of us and at Mrs. Grose's, well in sight. It was a crisp, clear day, the first of its order for some time. The night had brought a touch of frost, and the autumn air, bright and sharp, made the church bells almost gay. It was an odd accident of thought that I should have happened at such a moment to be particularly and very gratefully struck with the obedience of my little charges. Why did they never resent my inexorable, my perpetual society? Something or other had brought nearer home to me that I had all but pinned the boy to my shawl, and that in the way our companions were marshalled before me, I might have appeared to provide against some danger of rebellion. I was like a jailer, but with an eye to possible surprises and escapes. But all this belonged, I mean their magnificent little surrender, just to the special array of the facts that were most abysmal. Turned out for Sunday by his uncle's tailor, who had a free hand and a notion of pretty waistcoats and of his grand little air, Miles's whole title to independence, the rights of his sex and situation, were so stamped upon him that if he had suddenly struck for freedom, I should have had nothing to say. I was, by the strangest of chances, wondering how I should meet him when the revolution unmistakably occurred. I call it a revolution because I now see how, with the word he spoke, the curtain rose on the last act of my dreadful drama, and the catastrophe was precipitated. "Look here, my dear, you know," he charmingly said. "When in the world, please, am I going back to school?" Transcribed here, the speech sounds harmless enough, particularly as uttered in the sweet, high, casual pipe with which, at all interlocutors, but above all at his eternal governess, he threw off intonations as if he were tossing roses. There was something in them that always made one catch, and I caught at any rate now so effectually that I stopped as short as if one of the trees of the park had fallen across the road. There was something new on the spot between us, and he was perfectly aware I recognised it, though to enable me to do so he had no need to look a whit less candid and charming than usual. I could feel in him how he already, from my at first finding nothing to reply, perceived the advantage he had gained. I was so slow to find anything that he had plenty of time, after a minute, to continue with his suggestive but inconclusive smile. "You know, my dear, that for a fellow to be with a lady always—" His "my dear" was constantly on his lips for me, and nothing could have expressed more the exact shade of the sentiment with which I desired to inspire my pupils than its fond familiarity. It was so respectfully easy. But oh, how I felt that at present I must pick my own phrases. I remember that, to gain time, I tried to laugh, and I seemed to see in the beautiful face with which he watched me how ugly and queer I looked. "And always with the same lady?" I returned. He neither blenched or winked. The whole thing was virtually out between us. "Oh, of course she's a jolly perfect lady, but after all I'm a fellow, don't you see, who's, well, getting on." I lingered there with him an instant, ever so kindly. "Yes, you're getting on." Oh, but I felt helpless. I have kept to this day the heartbreaking little idea of how he seemed to know that and to play with it. "And you can't say I've not been awfully good, can you?" I laid my hand on his shoulder, for though I felt how much better it would have been to walk on, I was not yet quite able. "No, I can't say that, Miles. Except just that one night, you know." "That one night?" I couldn't look as straight as he. "Why, when I went out of the house." "Oh, yes, but I forget what you did it for." "You forget?" He spoke with the sweet extravagance of childish reproach. "Why, it was just to show you I could." "Oh, yes, you could. And I can again." I felt I might perhaps, after all, succeed in keeping my wits about me. "Certainly. But you won't." "No, not that again. It was nothing." "It was nothing," I said. "But we must go on." He resumed our walk with me, passing his hand into my arm. Then when am I going back? I wore, in turning it over, my most responsible air. Were you very happy at school? He just considered. Oh, I'm happy enough anywhere. Well then, I quavered, if you're just as happy here. Ah, but that isn't everything. Of course, you know a lot. But you hint that you know almost as much? I risked as he paused. Not half I want to, Miles honestly professed. But it isn't so much that. What is it then? Well, I want to see more life. I see. We had arrived within sight of the church and of various persons, including several of the household of Bligh, on their way to it, and clustered about the door to see us go in. I quickened our step. I wanted to get there before the question between us opened up much further. I reflected hungrily that he would have for more than an hour to be silent, and I thought with envy of the comparative dusk of the pew and of the almost spiritual help of the hassock on which I might bend my knees. I seemed literally to be running a race with some confusion to which he was about to reduce me, but I felt he had got in first, when, before we had entered the churchyard, he threw out, "I want my own sort." It literally made me bound forward. "There aren't many of your own sort, Miles," I laughed. "Unless perhaps dear little Flora." "You really compare me to a baby girl?" This found me singularly weak. "Don't you then love our sweet Flora?" "If I didn't, and you too, if I didn't," he repeated as if retreating for a jump, yet leaving his thought so unfinished that, after we had come into the gate, another stop, which he imposed on me by the pressure of his arm, had become inevitable. Mrs. Grose and Flora had passed into the church. The other worshippers had followed, and we were, for the minute, alone among the old, thick graves. We had paused on the path from the gate by a low, oblong, table-like tomb. "Yes, if you didn't." He looked, while I waited, about at the graves. "Well, you know what." But he didn't move, and he presently produced something that made me drop straight down on the stone slab as if suddenly to rest. "Does my uncle think what you think?" I markedly rested. "How do you know what I think?" "Ah, well, of course I don't, for it strikes me you never tell me. But I mean, does he know?" "Know what, Miles?" "Why, the way I'm going on." I recognised quickly enough that I could make to this inquiry no answer that wouldn't involve something of a sacrifice of my employer. Yet it struck me that we were all at Bligh sufficiently sacrificed to make that venial. "I don't think your uncle much cares." Miles, on this, stood looking at me. "Then don't you think he can be made to?" "In what way?" "Why, by his coming down." "But who'll get him to come down?" "I will," said the boy said with extraordinary brightness and emphasis. He gave me another look charged with that expression, and then marched off alone to the church. Chapter 15. The business was practically settled from the moment I never followed him. It was a pitiful surrender to agitation, but my being aware of this had somehow no power to restore me. I only sat there on my tomb and read into what our young friend had said to me the fullness of its meaning, by the time I had grasped the whole of which I had also embraced for absence, the pretext that I was ashamed to offer my pupils and the rest of the congregation such an example of delay. What I said to myself, above all, was that Miles had got something out of me, and that the gauge of it for him would be just this awkward collapse. He had got it out of me that there was something I was much afraid of, and that he should probably be able to make use of my fear to gain, for his own purpose, more freedom. My fear was of having to deal with the intolerable question of the grounds of his dismissal from school, since that was really but the question of the horrors gathered behind. That his uncle should arrive to treat with me of these things was a solution that, strictly speaking, I ought now to have desired to bring on. But I could so little face the ugliness and the pain of it that I simply procrastinated and lived from hand to mouth. The boy, to my deep discomposure, was immensely in the right, was in a position to say to me, "Either you clear up with my guardian the mystery of this interruption of my studies, or you cease to expect me to lead with you a life that's so unnatural for a boy." What was so unnatural for the particular boy I was concerned with was this sudden revelation of a consciousness and a plan. That was what really overcame me, what prevented my going in. I walked round the church, hesitating, hovering. I reflected that I had already, with him, hurt myself beyond repair. Therefore I could patch up nothing, and it was too extreme an effort to squeeze beside him into the pew. He would be so much more sure than ever to pass his arm into mine and make me sit there for an hour in close silent contact with his commentary on our talk. For the first minute since his arrival I wanted to get away from him. As I paused beneath the high east window and listened to the sounds of worship, I was taken with an impulse that might master me, I felt, and completely, should I give it the least encouragement. I might easily put an end to my ordeal by getting away altogether. Here was my chance. There was no one to stop me. I could give the whole thing up, turn my back and bolt. It was only a question of hurrying again, for a few preparations to the house which the attendance at church of so many of the servants would practically have left unoccupied. No one, in short, could blame me if I should just drive desperately off. What was it to get away if I should get away only till dinner? That would be in a couple of hours, at the end of which, I had the acute prevision, my little pupils would play at innocent wonder about my non-appearance in their train. "What did you do, you naughty bad thing? Why in the world to worry us so, and take our thoughts off too, don't you know? Did you desert us at the very door?" I couldn't meet such questions, nor, as they asked them, their false little lovely eyes. Yet it was all so exactly what I should have to meet that, as the prospect grew sharp to me, I at last let myself go. I got, so far as the immediate moment was concerned, away. I came straight out of the churchyard and, thinking hard, retraced my steps through the park. It seemed to me that by the time I reached the house, I had made up my mind to cynical flight. The Sunday stillness, both of the approaches and of the interior, in which I met no one, fairly stirred me with a sense of opportunity. Were I to get off quickly this way, I should get off without a scene, without a word. My quickness would have to be remarkable, however, and the question of a conveyance was the great one to settle. Tormented in the hall with difficulties and obstacles, I remember sinking down at the foot of the staircase, suddenly collapsing there on the lowest step, and then, with a revulsion, recalling that it was exactly where, more than a month before, in the darkness of night and just so bowed with evil things, I had seen the spectre of the most horrible of women. At this I was able to straighten myself. I went the rest of the way up. I made, in my turmoil, for the schoolroom, where there were objects belonging to me that I should have to take. But I opened the door to find again, in a flash, my eyes unsealed. In the presence of what I saw, I reeled straight back upon resistance. Seated at my own table in the clear noonday light, I saw a person whom, without my previous experience, I should have taken at the first blush for some housemaid who might have stayed at home to look after the place, and who, availing herself of rare relief from observation and of the schoolroom table and my pens, ink, and paper, had applied herself to the considerable effort of a letter to her sweetheart. There was an effort in the way that, while her arms rested on the table, her hands, with evident weariness, supported her head. But at the moment I took this in, I had already become aware that, in spite of my entrance, her attitude strangely persisted. Then it was, with the very act of its announcing itself, that her identity flared up in a change of posture. She rose, not as if she had heard me, but with an indescribable grand melancholy of indifference and detachment, and, within a dozen feet of me, stood there as my vile predecessor. Dishonoured and tragic, she was all before me. But even as I fixed and, for memory, secured it, the awful image passed away. Dark as midnight in her dark dress, her haggard beauty in her unutterable woe, she had looked at me long enough to appear to say that her right to sit at my table was as good as mine to sit at hers. While these instants lasted, indeed, I had the extraordinary chill of a feeling that it was I who was the intruder. It was as a wild protest against it that, actually addressing her, "You terrible, miserable woman," I heard myself break into a sound that, by the open door, rang through the long passage and the empty house. She looked at me as if she heard me, but I had recovered myself and cleared the air. There was nothing in the room the next minute but the sunshine and the sense that I must stay. Chapter 16. I had so perfectly expected the return of the others to be marked by a demonstration that I was freshly upset at having to find them merely dumb and discreet about my desertion. Instead of gaily denouncing and caressing me, they made no allusion to my having failed them, and I was left, for the time, on perceiving that she too said nothing, to study Mrs. Grose's odd face. I did this to such purpose that I made sure they had in some way bribed her to silence. A silence that, however, I would engage to break down on the first private opportunity. This opportunity came before tea. I secured 5 minutes with her in the housekeeper's room, where, in the twilight, amid a smell of lately baked bread, but with the place all swept and garnished, I found her sitting in pained placidity before the fire. So I see her still, so I see her best, facing the flame from her straight chair in the dusky, shining room, a large, clean picture of the put away, of drawers closed and locked, and rest without a remedy. "Oh yes, they asked me to say nothing, and to please them, so long as they were there, of course I promised. But what had happened to you?" "I only went with you for the walk," I said. "I had then to come back to meet a friend." She showed her surprise. "A friend? You?" "Oh yes, I've a couple." I laughed. "But did the children give you a reason?" "For not alluding to your leaving us? Yes, they said you'd like it better." "Do you like it better?" My face had made her rueful. "No, I like it worse." But after an instant I added, Did they say why I should like it better? No. Master Miles only said, we must do nothing but what she likes. I wish indeed he would. And what did Flora say? Miss Flora was too sweet. She said, oh, of course, of course. And I said the same. I thought a moment. You were too sweet, too. I can hear you all. But nonetheless, between Miles and me, it's now all out. All out? My companion stared. Excuse me. But what, miss? Everything. It doesn't matter. I've made up my mind. I came home, my dear, I went on, for a talk with Miss Jessel. I had by this time formed the habit of having Mrs. Grose literally well in hand in advance of my sounding that note, so that even now, as she bravely blinked under the signal of my word, I could keep her comparatively firm. A talk? Do you mean she spoke? It came to that. I found her on my return in the schoolroom. And what did she say? I can hear the good woman still, and the candour of her stupefaction. That she suffers the torments. It was this, of a truth, that made her, as she filled out my picture, gape. Do you mean, she faltered, of the lost? Of the lost, of the damned. And that's why, to share them, I faltered myself with the horror of it. But my companion, with less imagination, kept me up. To share them? She wants Flora. Mrs. Grose might, as I gave it to her, fairly have fallen away from me had I not been prepared. I still held her there, to show I was. As I've told you, however, it doesn't matter. Because you've made up your mind. But to what? To everything. And what do you call everything? Why, to sending for their uncle. Oh, miss, in pity do, my friend broke out. Ah, but I will. I see it's the only way. What's out, as I told you, with Miles, is that if he thinks I'm afraid to, and has ideas of what he gains by that, he shall see he's mistaken. Yes, his uncle shall have it here from me on the spot, and before the boy himself, if necessary, that if I'm to be reproached with having done nothing again about more school— Yes, miss? My companion pressed me. Well, there's that awful reason. There were now clearly so many of these for my poor colleague that she was excusable for being vague. But, which? Why, the letter from his old place. You'll show it to the master? I ought to have done so on the instant. Oh, no, said Mrs. Grose with decision. I'll put it before him, I went on inexorably, that I can't undertake to work the question on behalf of a child who has been expelled, for we've never in the least known what, Mrs. Grose declared. For wickedness. For what else, when he's so clever and beautiful and perfect? Is he stupid? Is he untidy? Is he infirm? Is he ill-natured? He's exquisite. So it can be only that, and that would open up the whole thing. After all, I said, it's their uncle's fault. If he left here such people— he didn't really in the least know them. The fault's mine. She had turned quite pale. Well, you shan't suffer, I answered. The children shan't, she emphatically returned. I was silent a while. We looked at each other. Then what am I to tell him? You needn't tell him anything. I'll tell him. I measured this. Do you mean you're right? Remembering she couldn't, I caught myself up. How do you communicate? I tell the bailiff. He writes. And should you like him to write our story? My question had a sarcastic force that I had not fully intended, and it made her after a moment inconsequently break down. The tears were again in her eyes. Ah, miss, you write. Well, tonight, I at last returned, and on this we separated. And I think there we shall take a break. I hope you are enjoying so far. The second half will probably be a little bit shorter, just because I can't get to the end of the book tonight, but I want to make sure that we have enough for a stream next week, so it'll be a bit of a shorter one tonight. But yes, go do break-related things, and we shall see you back in about 5 minutes. Bye for now. And we return. Welcome back, everybody. I hope we have all had a good break. I have freed a moth. There was a moth that needed to be outside, so I put it outside. And it didn't fly straight back in, so I consider that a success. But yeah, hope we're all doing all right. Had good breaks, everything. You have successfully switched buses. Oh, nice one, Andy. Good job. Sorry, I was overly patronising. I didn't mean it to be. But yeah, this kid, Miles, is so well written. Just really, really creepy. Like, he's a child, and somehow you feel threatened by him because he's patronising, and just bleh. Unpleasant child. Not nice. Also, hello Raytracer. I didn't get to say hi. I forgot to say hi. Thank you very much for the resub and welcome on in. You did get lightning. You did indeed. Miles is a psychopath. Yeah, well, I mean, he's basically being trained by one, so yeah. You have successfully kept assembling a puzzle, Parola. Nice. What puzzle have you got on today? Is it an appropriate one? Is it something completely unrelated? What have we got? What's on the puzzle menu tonight? Tea acquired. Excellent. Excellent job. I did not get a tea, but I should have done. You keep wanting to reach for Dave's "wanna be my friend" points reward. Oh, nice. Some geese. Okay, sure. Unrelated, but geese are cool. Geese landing in water. Okay. just some geese. Just clip art of a goose. Nice. But yeah, I think we can all join the hating Miles club. Earlier it was a painting of an owl on the moon. Oh, that's nice. No one wants to be Miles's friend. No. You started doodling whilst listening, and it's a vibe. Excellent. We are, for those of you who are slightly newer to us, we are firmly in the camp of do whatever the heck you want whilst our streams are on, and if it's crafty or arty, then bonus points. Even though there are no points. But yeah, lots of people craft along to our streams or draw or whatever, and it's great. We love it. It's good stuff. It's like absorbing all of the arts. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. All in one. There's a painting too, just not stock photo geese. I mean, it would be even funnier if it was stock photo geese. That would be pretty great. How about worky? You do a lot of worky. You can work too. You can do whatever you want. Within reason. Don't, like, I don't know, do like extreme winter sports or something whilst listening to us. That might be bad for your health. Or climbing or abseiling or something. I don't know, you could probably climb and listen to us as well. Also, hello Soft Cheese. Good name. Welcome in. That would be so funny. What, just like extreme commuting? Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, that would be quite entertaining. Just like, oh, that would be brilliant. Just having like video footage of like someone doing some really cool like ski jumps or something, and like the actual video itself is just like like rock and roll kind of, or like metal guitar or something like that, and then inside their head it just cuts to like what they're hearing in their helmet, and it's just like us reading some very chill book. Parkour, yes, that would also be good. Like, what are people actually listening to when they're doing the sports? That could be quite entertaining. Maybe we could do something with that. I don't know. Some kind of, get Sam to do some kind of silly video with lots of like stock footage of skiers. I don't know. No idea where I was going with this. But yes. So yeah, do whatever you want when you're listening to us, and yeah, if it's yeah, we are chill for a reason. But yeah. After our little break, after we have all refueled and things, I guess we can carry on. You're imagining stream as one of those TikToks where half the screen is unrelated video game footage, except it's parkour. Oh, nice. Yeah, interesting. Get JD dressed up in his sports gear from last time, do something vaguely dangerous on a skateboard. JD was wearing sports gear? I haven't caught any of the John streams for a while, as in the singing streams, so I do not know. Do something vaguely dangerous in a skateboard. I mean, doing something vaguely dangerous in a skateboard is putting Sam on a skateboard. At the moment. Please no sports, JD. Like a jersey. Oh, okay, right. There's me thinking he was like, I don't know, in like hockey gear or something. Sportsy JD is very confusing. Ah, yes. A Leafs jersey and a beanie. Wow. I can't imagine him in that. Somehow. Yeah. Anyway. Now we've got very far off topic. As I say, the next bit of stream will probably be a little bit shorter. Possibly a lot shorter. We shall see how long it takes me to read this. But yeah, I hope we're all right with that. And we shall continue with the creepy children being really, really flippin' creepy. Because Miles is just a problem. Ugh. So yes, if we're all sitting comfortably, have some kind of beverage or whatever, then we shall continue with Chapter 17. I went so far in the evening as to make a beginning. The weather had changed back, a great wind was abroad, and beneath the lamp in my room, with Flora at peace beside me, I sat for a long time before a blank sheet of paper and listened to the lash of the rain and the batter of the gusts. Finally I went out. Taking a candle, I crossed the passage and listened a minute at Miles's door. What, under my endless obsession, I had been impelled to listen for was some betrayal of his not being at rest, and I presently caught one, but not in the form of I had expected. His voice tinkled out. "I say, you there! Come in!" It was gaiety in the gloom. I went in with my light and found him in bed, very wide awake, but very much at his ease. "Well, what are you up to?" he asked with a grace of sociability in which it occurred to me that Mrs. Grose, had she been present, might have looked in vain for proof that anything was out. I stood over him with my candle. "How did you know I was there?" "Why, of course I heard you. Did you fancy you make no noise? You're like a troop of cavalry." He beautifully laughed. "Then you weren't asleep?" "Not much. I lie awake and think." I had put my candle, designedly, a short way off, and then, as he held out his friendly old hand to me, had sat down on the edge of his bed. "What is it," I asked, "that you think of?" "What in the world, my dear, but you?" "Ah, the pride I take in your appreciation doesn't insist on that. I had so far rather you slept." "Well, I think also, you know, of this queer business of ours." I marked the coolness of his firm little hand. "Of what queer business, Miles?" "Why, the way you bring me up, and all the rest." I fairly held breath a minute, and even from my glimmering taper there was light enough to show how he smiled up at me from his pillow. "What do you mean by all the rest?" "Oh, you know. I could say nothing for a minute, though I felt as I held his hand and our eyes continued to meet that my silence had all the air of admitting his charge, and that nothing in the whole world of reality was perhaps at that moment so fabulous as our actual relation. "Certainly you shall go back to school," I said, "if it be that troubles you. But not to the old place. We must find another, a better. How could I know it did trouble you, this question, when you never told me so, never spoke of it at all? His clear, listening face, framed in its smooth whiteness, made him for the minute as appealing as some wistful patient in a children's hospital, and I would have given, as the resemblance came to me, all I possessed on earth, really, to be the nurse or the sister of charity who might have helped to cure him. Well, even as it was, I might perhaps help. Do you know, you've never said a word to me about your school? I mean the old one. Never mentioned it in any way. He seemed to wonder. He smiled with the same loveliness. But he clearly gained time. He waited. He called for guidance. Haven't I? It was for me to help him. It was for the thing I had met. Something in his tone and the expression of his face, as I got this from him, set my heart aching with such a pang as it had never yet known. So unutterably touching was it to see his little brain puzzled and his little resources taxed to play, under the spell laid on him, a part of innocence and consistency. No, never. From the hour you came back. You've never mentioned to me one of your masters, one of your comrades, nor the least little thing that ever happened to you at school. Never, little Miles. No, never have you given me an inkling of anything that may have happened there. Therefore you can fancy how much I'm in the dark. Until you came out that way this morning, you had, since the first hour I saw you, scarce even made a reference to anything in your previous life. You seemed so perfectly to accept the present. It was extraordinary how my absolute conviction of his secret preciosity, or whatever I might call the poison of an influence that I dared but half phrase, made him, in spite of the faint breath of his inward trouble, appear as accessible as an older person, forced me to treat him as an intelligent equal. I thought you wanted to go on as you are. It struck me that at this he just faintly coloured. He gave, at any rate, like a convalescent slightly fatigued, a languid shake of his head. I don't. I want to get away. You're tired of Bly? Oh, no, I like Bly. Well, then... Oh, you don't know what a boy wants. Oh, you know what a boy wants. Sorry. I felt I didn't know so well as Miles, and I took temporary refuge. You want to go to your uncle? Again at this, with his sweet ironic face, he made a movement on the pillow. Ah, you can't get off with that. I was silent a little, and it was I now, I think, who changed colour. My dear, I don't want to get off. You can't even if you do. You can't. He lay beautifully staring. My uncle must come down and you must completely settle things. If we do, I returned with some spirit, you may be sure it will be to take you quite away. Well, don't you understand that's exactly what I'm working for? You'll have to tell him about the way you've let it all drop. You'll have to tell him a tremendous lot. The exultation with which he uttered this helped me somehow for the instant to meet him rather more. And how much will you, Miles, have to tell him? There are things he'll ask you. He turned it over. Very likely. But what things? The things you've never told me. To make up his mind what to do with you. He can't send you back. I don't want to go back, he broke in. I want a new field. He said it with admirable serenity, with positive unimpeachable gaiety, and doubtless it was that very note that most evoked for me the poignancy, the unnatural childish tragedy of his probable reappearance at the end of 3 months with all this bravado and still more dishonour. It overwhelmed me now that I should never be able to bear that, and it made me let myself go. I threw myself upon him, and in the tenderness of my pity I embraced him. "Dear little Miles! Dear little Miles!" My face was close to his, and he let me kiss him, simply taking it with indulgent good humour. "Well, old lady? Is there nothing at all that you want to tell me?" He turned off a little, facing round toward the wall and holding up his hand to look as one had seen sick children look. "I've told you. I told you this morning." Oh, I was sorry for him. "That you just want me not to worry you?" He looked round at me now, as if in recognition of my understanding him, then ever so gently, "To let me alone," he replied. There was even a strange little dignity in it, something that made me release him, yet, when I had slowly risen, linger beside him. God knows I had never wished to harass him, but I felt that merely at this, to turn my back on him was to abandon, or, to put it more truly, to lose him. "I've just begun a letter to your uncle," I said. "Well then, finish it." I waited a minute. "What happened before?" He gazed up at me again. "Before what?" "Before you came back, and before you went away." For some time he was silent, but he continued to meet my eyes. "What happened?" "What happened?" It made me, the sound of the words in which it seemed to me I caught for the very first time a small faint quaver of consenting consciousness. It made me drop to my knees beside the bed and seize once more the chance of possessing him. "Dear little Miles, if you knew how I want to help you. It's only that, it's nothing but that, and I'd rather die than give you a pain or do you a wrong. And I'd rather die than hurt a hair of you. Dear little Miles." Oh, I brought it out now, even if I should go too far. "I just want you to help me to save you." But I knew in a moment after this that I had gone too far. The answer to my appeal was instantaneous, but it came in the form of an extraordinary blast and chill, a gust of frozen air and a shake of the room as great as if, in the wild wind, the casement had crashed in. The boy gave a loud, high shriek, which, lost in the rest of the shock of sound, might have seemed indistinctly, though I was close to him, a note either of jubilation or of terror. I jumped to my feet again, and was conscious of darkness. So for a moment we remained, while I stared about me and saw the drawn curtains unstirred and the window tight. "Why, the candle's out!" I then cried. "It was I who blew it, dear," said Miles. Chapter 18. The next day, after lessons, Mrs. Grose found a moment to say to me quietly, "Have you written, miss?" "Yes, I've written." But I didn't add, for the hour, that my letter, sealed and directed, was still in my pocket. There would be time enough to send it before the messenger should go to the village. Meanwhile, there had been on the part of my pupils no more brilliant, more exemplary morning. It was exactly as if they had both at heart to gloss over any recent little friction. They performed the dizziest feats of arithmetic, soaring quite out of my feeble range, and perpetrated, in higher spirits than ever, geographical and historical jokes. It was conspicuous, of course, in Miles in particular, that he appeared to wish to show how easily he could let me down. This child, to my memory, really lives in a setting of beauty and misery that no words can translate. There was a distinction all his own in every impulse he revealed. Never was a small natural creature to the uniformed eye all frankness and freedom, a more ingenious, a more extraordinary little gentleman. I had perpetually to guard against the wonder of contemplation into which my initiated view betrayed me, to check the irrelevant gaze and discouraged sigh in which I constantly both attacked and renounced the enigma of what such a little gentleman could have done that deserved a penalty. Say that, by the dark prodigy I knew, the imagination of all evil had been opened up to him. All the justice within me ached for the proof that it could ever have flowered into an act. He had never, at any rate, been such a little gentleman as when, after our early dinner on this dreadful day, he came round to me and asked if I shouldn't like him for half an hour to play to me. David playing to Saul could never have shown a finer sense of the occasion. It was literally a charming exhibition of tact, of magnanimity, and quite tantamount to his saying outright, "The true knights we love to read about never push an advantage too far. I know what you mean now. You mean that to be let alone yourself and not followed up, you'll cease to worry and spy upon me, won't keep me so close to you, will let me go and come. Well, I come, you see, but I don't go. There'll be plenty of time for that. I do really delight in your society, and I only want to show you that I contended for a principle." It may be imagined whether I resisted this appeal or failed to accompany him again, hand in hand, to the schoolroom. He sat down at the old piano and played as he had never played. And if there are those who think he had better have been kicking a football, I can only say that I wholly agree with them. For at the end of a time that under his influence I had quite ceased to measure, I started up with a strange sense of having literally slept at my post. It was after luncheon, and by the schoolroom fire, and yet I hadn't really in the least slept. I had only done something much worse. I had forgotten. Where all this time was Flora? When I put the question to Miles, he played on a minute before answering, and then could only say, "Why, my dear, how could I know?" Breaking moreover into a happy laugh, which immediately after, as it were a vocal accompaniment, he prolonged into incoherent, extravagant song. I went straight to my room, but his sister was not there. Then, before going downstairs, I looked into several others. As she was nowhere about, she would surely be with Mrs. Grose, whom in the comfort of that theory I accordingly proceeded in quest of. I found her where I had found her the evening before, but she met my quick challenge with blank, scared ignorance. She had only supposed that, after the repast, I had carried off both the children, as to which she was quite in her right, for it was the very first time I had allowed the little girl out of my sight without some special provision. Of course, now indeed she might be with the maids, so that the immediate thing was to look for her without an air of alarm. This we promptly arranged between us. But when, 10 minutes later, and in pursuance of our arrangement, we met in the hall, it was only to report on either side that after guarded inquiries we had altogether failed to trace her. For a minute there, apart from observation, we exchanged mute alarms, and I could feel with what high interest my friend returned me all those I had from the first given her. "She'll be above," she presently said, in one of the rooms you haven't searched." "No, she's at a distance. I had made up my mind. She has gone out." Mrs. Grose stared. "Without a hat?" I naturally also looked volumes. "Isn't that woman always without one?" She's with her. She's with her, I declared. We must find them. My hand was on my friend's arm, but she failed for the moment, confronted with such an account of the matter, to respond to my pressure. She communed on the contrary, where she stood with her uneasiness. And where's Master Miles? Oh, he's with Quint. They'll be in the schoolroom. Lord, miss! My view, I was myself aware, and therefore I suppose my tone, had never yet reached so calm an assurance. The trick's played, I went on. They've successfully worked their plan. He found the most divine little way to keep me quiet while she went off. Divine? Mrs. Grose bewilderedly echoed. Infernal, then, I almost cheerfully rejoined. He has provided for himself as well. But come. She had helplessly gloomed at the upper regions. You leave him? So long with Quint? Yes. I don't mind that now. She always ended at these moments by getting possession of my hand, and in this manner she could at present still stay me. But after gasping an instant at my sudden resignation, "Because of your letter?" she eagerly brought out. I quickly, by way of answer, felt for my letter, drew it forth, held it up, and then, freeing myself, went and laid it on the great hall table. Luke will take it, I said as I came back. Excuse me. I reached the house door and opened it. I was already on the steps. My companion still demurred. The storm of the night and the early morning had dropped, but the afternoon was damp and grey. I came down to the drive while she stood on the doorway. You go with nothing on? What do I care when the child has nothing? I can't wait to dress, I cried, and if you must do so, I leave you. Try meanwhile yourself upstairs. With them? Oh, on this, the poor woman promptly joined me. Excuse me, just inhaling water. Sorry, everybody. I'm back. Chapter 19. We went straight to the lake, as it was called at Bly, and I dare say rightly called, though it may have been a sheet of water less remarkable than my untravelled eyes supposed it. My acquaintance with sheets of water was small, and the pool of Bly, at all events on the few occasions of my consenting, under the protection of my pupils, to affront its surface in the old flat-bottomed boat moored there for our use, had impressed me both with its extent and its agitation. The usual place of embarkation was 1/2 mile from the house, but I had an intimate conviction that, wherever Flora might be, she was not near home. She had not given me the slip for any small adventure, and, since the day of the very great one that I had shared with her by the pond, I had been aware, in our walks, of the quarter to which she most inclined. This was why I had now given to Mrs. Grose's steps so marked a direction making her, when she perceived it, oppose a resistance that showed me she was freshly mystified. You're going to the water, miss? You think she's in? She may be, though the depth is, I believe, nowhere very great. But what I judge most likely is that she's on the spot from which, the other day, we saw together what I told you. When she pretended not to see, with that astounding self-possession. I've always been sure she wanted to go back alone, and now her brother has managed it for her. Mrs. Groves still stood where she had stopped. You suppose they really talk of them? I could meet this with an assurance. They say things that, if we heard them, would simply appall us. And if she is there? Yes? Then Miss Jessel is? Beyond a doubt. You shall see. Oh, thank you, my friend cried, planted so firm that, taking it in, I went straight on without her. By the time I reached the pool, however, she was close behind me, and I knew that, whatever, to her apprehension, might befall me, the exposure of sticking to me struck her as her least danger. She exhaled a moan of relief as we at last came in sight of the greater part of the water without a sight of the child. There was no trace of Flora on that nearer side of the bank where my observation of her had been most startling, and none on the opposite edge where, save for a margin of some 20 yards, a thick copse came down to the water. This expanse, oblong in shape, was so narrow compared to its length that, with its ends out of view, it might have been taken for a scant river. We looked at the empty stretch, and then I felt the suggestion in my friend's eyes. I knew what she meant, and I replied with a negative headshake. No, wait! She has taken the boat. My companion stared at the vacant mooring place, and then again across the lake. Then where is it? Our not seeing it is the strongest of proofs. She has used it to go over, and then has managed to hide it. All alone? That child? She's not alone, and at such times she's not a child. She's an old woman. I scanned all the visible shore while Mrs. Groves took again, into the queer element I offered her, one of her plunges of submission. Then I pointed out that the boat might perfectly be in a small refuge formed by one of the recesses of the pool, an indentation masked for the hither side by a projection of the bank and by a clump of trees growing close to the water. But if the boat's there, where on earth's she? My colleague anxiously asked. That's exactly what we must learn. And I started to walk further. By going all the way round? Certainly, far as it is. It will take us but 10 minutes, yet it's far enough to have made the child prefer not to walk. She went straight over. Laws! Cried my friend again. The chain of my logic was ever too strong for her. It dragged her at my heels even now, and when we had got halfway round, a devious, tiresome process, on ground much broken and by a path choked with overgrowth, I paused to give her a breath. I sustained her with a grateful arm, assuring her that she might hugely help me, and this started us afresh, so that in the course of but a few minutes more we reached a point from which we found the boat to be where I had supposed it. It had been intentionally left as much as possible out of sight, and was tied to one of the stakes of a fence that came just there down to the back brink, and that had been an assistance to disembarking. I recognised, as I looked at the pair of short, thick oars quite safely drawn up, the prodigious character of the feat for a little girl, but I had by this time lived too long among wonders, and had panted to too many livelier measures. There was a gate in the fence, through which we passed, and that brought us, after a trifling interval, more into the open. Then, "There she is!" we both exclaimed at once. Flora, a short way off, stood before us on the grass, and smiled as if her performance had now become complete. The next thing she did, however, was to stoop straight down and pluck, quite as if it were all she was there for, a big, ugly spray of withered fern. I at once felt sure she had just come out of the copse. She waited for us, not herself taking a step, and I was conscious of the rare solemnity with which we presently approached her. She smiled, and we met. But it was all done in a silence by this time flagrantly ominous. Mrs. Grose was the first to break the spell. She threw herself on her knees and, drawing the child to her breast, clasped in a long embrace the little, tender, yielding body. While this dumb convulsion lasted, I could only watch it, which I did the more intently when I saw Flora's face peep at me over our companion's shoulder. It was serious now. The flicker had left it, but it strengthened the pang with which I at that moment envied Mrs. Grose the simplicity of her relation. Still, all the while, nothing more passed between us, save that Flora had let her foolish fern again drop to the ground. What she and I had virtually said to each other was that pretexts were useless now. When Mrs. Grose finally got up, she kept the child's hand, so that the two were still before me, and the singular reticence of our communication was even more marked in the frank look she addressed me. "I'll be hanged," it said, "if I'll speak." It was Flora who, gazing all over me in candid wonder, was the first. She was struck with our bare-headed aspect. "Why, where are your things?" "Where are yours, my dear? Where yours are, my dear?" I promptly returned. She had already got back her gaiety, and appeared to take this as an answer quite sufficient. "And where's Miles?" she went on. There was something in the small valour of it that quite finished me. These 3 words from her were in a flash like the glitter of a drawn blade, the jostle of the cup that my hand for weeks and weeks had held high and full to the brim, and that now, even before speaking, I felt overflow in a deluge. "I'll tell you if you'll tell me," I heard myself say, then heard the tremor in which it broke. "Well, what?" Mrs. Grose's suspense blazed at me, but it was too late now, and I brought the thing out handsomely. "Where, my pet, is Miss Jessel?" And that is where we shall end for tonight. Thank you for listening. Dun dun dun. So now Flora's creepy. I mean, she was creepy anyway, but who knows what's just been happening? Nobody knows. But everything's fine, and the kids are fine. It's all fine. Everything's okay. Exactly. Yeah. Let's hope our protagonist doesn't die, now that she's, said, "I know what's up." I mean, they know she knows what's up, but this is the first time she's, properly spoken it. So, yeah. This is fine, they are very normal children. Exactly, it's just normal kids. Normal, 8-year-old girls rowing across a lake with oars that are definitely too big for her, and she's not strong enough to do that. It's all fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Normal kids doing normal kid stuff. Exactly. Nothing weird or creepy here. Everything's fine. But yeah, hope you're enjoying it. I certainly am. We've got, next week's just exploring a new hobby. Yeah, exactly. Next week's stream of this will probably be a short one. I might do it without a break, actually, because it's not a particularly long stretch of book left. But that means we've done a book in October. Hell yeah, that's what I wanted to do. But yeah, it's It's a good story, isn't it? It's great stuff. Very much enjoying. But yeah, let's see. Absolutely enjoying it. Can't wait for the end. Yeah, me neither. See, I know how it ends, but I haven't read the ending, so I'm intrigued how it is written out. Looking forward to next week already? Well, good. I'm glad. Thank you very much all for being here. Let's see if our good friend Stephen is on. Most likely. Who have we got? Ooh, several people. Ooh, I tell you what. They've been going for a while. I don't know how long they'll be going for now. But if Sam is around to be on the Chilliteracy account, we could probably raid over to Black Tabby Games, who are streaming a 1 anniversary live stream for their wonderful game Slay the Princess, which we have played. I know Arian has also played. Yeah. You can, although you're a little busy. Are you doing Deadlock? But can chat maybe. Alright, well, we'll see if they acknowledge our existence or not. But yeah, we'll go ahead over there. There may be spoilers for pristine cut I guess DLC, but expansion, I guess, on the game. So be aware if you don't want spoilers for Slay the Princess. Maybe don't go over on the raid, but they are wonderful people, very, very talented. And yeah, we're gonna head on over there because it is spooky, and they are the spookies. So yeah, we will go head over there. Sam may or may not be back on Saturday. We shall see what happens. It would be nice to, but we shall see. And I should be back on Wednesday with the last part of The Turn of the Screw. But yeah, thank you all very much indeed for being here. You're all wonderful people. Go take care of yourselves. Yeah, we shall see you again very soon. Thank you all very much, and good night.